Hello everyone, I'm your narrator from Grave Hush, and I'm here to help you unwind tonight. I know many of you use these stories to fall asleep, so before we begin, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Also, where in the world are you listening from? And what time is it for you right now? Now, get cozy, take a deep breath, let your body sink into the stillness. It's time to relax and let the story carry you into sleep. Our first story tonight. It was a rainy Saturday morning, and I could hear the rain tapping against my window. I looked up from my laptop and let out a soft sigh. The sound was somewhat annoying, yet also oddly soothing, and I thought it might help me focus on the history essay I needed to finish for school. As I kept typing away on my laptop, I suddenly heard yelling and shouting. I paused, my fingers hovering over the keyboard, and groaned quietly to myself. Not again. I got up from my bed and walked out of my room, heading down the hall and downstairs, where the yelling grew louder. As I turned the corner, I spotted my mum and older brother Mark in the living room, arguing about something. "Mum, I already told you, I'm sorry. I should have called to let you know I'd be home late. I didn't realize the party would go on until 1 in the morning. And I've already told you that I don't like you or your brother being out that late. Something terrible could have happened to you. For heaven's sake, you could have been killed or kidnapped, Marcus." Mum and Mark continued their argument, clearly oblivious to my presence. I sighed softly, contemplating whether to just turn around and let them sort it out. Even though I was 25 and Mark was 27, Mum still treated us like children. She insisted we stay with her until we were both 30, which infuriated us. I felt a surge of frustration rising within me, and I cleared my throat as loudly as I could, causing Mum and Mark to stop arguing. They both turned to look at me. "Oh, my goodness, Daniel, I'm so sorry. Did we interrupt your studying?" Mum asked, sounding genuinely concerned. "I've been attempting to study for more than an hour, but I can't concentrate with you two bickering like children." Mark's face flushed, a deep red. I could tell he was embarrassed about the situation. Yet he was still angry with Mom and wouldn't cease his argument until he had expressed everything he wanted to say. "We're sorry, sweetheart. I'm just trying to explain to your brother that staying out late isn't wise." Mom said, "I've always disliked that particular trait of Mum's. She's such a worrywart, if that's the right term, because she frets over everything, even the most trivial matters. You know what? I'll just head to the library. Maybe I can finish my essay there, and hopefully there won't be anyone trying to tear each other apart." I nearly yelled the last part out of frustration as I turned and stormed back upstairs to my room to grab my things. As I shoved my laptop and notebook into my bag, I muttered under my breath about the constant fighting and how I felt treated like a child. Just as I was about to leave, I heard a knock on my bedroom door. I turned to see Mark leaning against the doorframe. I hadn't even noticed him come up behind me. "Let me guess, Mom sent you up here to stop me from heading to the library," I remarked, glancing at him. "Yep, she believes it's a terrible idea for you to go outside in this rainstorm because you might get sick or even struck by lightning, which is ridiculous, but she wouldn't listen when I told her that." I rolled my eyes and plopped down on my bed, slipping on my shoes and ensuring the straps were snug, but not so tight that they were cutting into my feet. "Honestly, I don't care what the worrywart or you think. I'm going to the library to finish my darn history essay without having to listen to another argument from either of you. Now, if you could do me a favor and tell Mum I'll be back before dinner, That would be great, I retorted. Before my brother could respond, I got up, tossed my bag over my shoulder, and pushed past him, making my way downstairs to the main part of the house. Mum was there, clearly waiting for me. I raised my hand to signal that I didn't want to hear her lecture and assured her I'd be home by dinner before stepping out onto the porch. The only sounds I could hear were the rain and the rumbling thunder. I let out a soft sigh, double-checking that my bag was securely closed, then pulled up my hoodie and set off toward the city library. Who would have thought a library would be open on a weekend? After a few minutes of walking along the rain-soaked street, feeling the droplets on my head and bag, I found myself in front of the library, a smile creeping onto my face. The library always brought me joy. There was something magical about the aroma of aged paper and the soft murmurs of books that captivated me. As I entered the library, I greeted the woman at the front desk. She returned my greeting with a smile, though I could sense she wasn't thrilled to see me looking so drenched. I located a spot to settle down, and a few minutes later, my belongings were spread out on the desk as I began working on my essay. In fact, my laptop remained tucked away in my bag while I attempted to proofread my notes before transferring them. I sighed quietly, frustrated that nothing seemed to make sense, and realized I needed some assistance. I got up and approached the front desk, inquiring if there were any history encyclopedias available that could aid me with my school essay. She informed me that all the history encyclopedias were located in the back corner of the library and advised me to be cautious while I was there since some of those books were quite ancient. I nodded in agreement and made my way to the back corner. Upon arrival, I began to sift through the aisles, but all the books appeared either dull or I was certain they wouldn't be of any assistance to me. Before long, I turned a corner and stumbled upon a section I had never seen before. It looked rather intimidating, as the overhead light was flickering and swaying back and forth. I noticed a layer of dust on the shelf, and a few bugs scurried out from the shadows, rushing past me. I glanced at all the encyclopedias and couldn't help but smile. Perhaps one of these could be useful to me, I thought. Grinning, I began to pull encyclopedias off the shelf, examining their covers. Some I had read previously, while others were quite old, likely published when my mum was my age. As I pushed one encyclopedia aside, something heavy tumbled down onto my foot, causing me to cry out in pain. I quickly slapped a hand over my mouth. Not wanting to disrupt the tranquility, I looked down and saw a thick, brown book lying on the ground. I bent down to pick it up and noticed it lacked any library codes or markings indicating ownership. However, I soon realized how worn and tattered it was. The spine was cracked. I dusted off the cover and read the title, which sent a shiver down my spine. Prophetic pages. I opened the book and began flipping through the pages. Each one yellowed with age and filled with handwritten notes and strange symbols that seemed to dance before my eyes. As I continued to flip through the pages, I discovered that each one contained a detailed entry about the life and death of an individual. It struck me that the names were eerily familiar. They were all people I knew, friends, family, acquaintances. I was in disbelief over what I was holding. When I turned to the next page, I nearly dropped the book on my feet once more. Timothy, Green, age 23, dies in a car accident on April 15th, 2023. Asterisk, asterisk. This page was dedicated to my childhood best friend, Timothy, or Tim, as I called him. April 15th was tomorrow, and I could feel my heart pounding like a drum in my chest. I closed the book, trying to convince myself that this was just a cruel joke. I glanced around the library, half expecting someone to jump out and shout, "Got you!" But the aisles were empty. The only sounds were the rain tapping against the nearby window and my heavy breathing. I came to the realization that I had to hurry home to call Tim and alert him about what was going to happen. I tucked the strange book under my arm and dashed back to the desk where my belongings were. A few minutes later, I found myself sprinting down the street as fast as a guy who mainly plays video games and practices the trumpet can manage. I began to ponder a multitude of thoughts. Was any of this real? Was the book some sort of cursed object that the library had been concealing? Upon arriving home, I rushed past Mark and Mum, who were in the kitchen preparing dinner. Thankfully, I didn't hear them arguing, but I didn't have the luxury of time to deal with that right now. Once I reached my room, I tossed my bag and the Prophetic Pages book onto my desk, then grabbed my phone from the nightstand. Without delay, I dialed Tim's number, my fingers trembling as the phone rang and rang. Just when I thought he wouldn't pick up, I heard his voice on the other end. "Dude, you need to listen to me. This is really important. Are you planning to go out?" "Tonight," I asked him. Timothy excitedly explained that he was actually going to see a new horror movie that had just been released and suggested I'd join him if I was done being Mr. History. I took a deep breath and pleaded with him to stay home, urging him not to drive anywhere and to just remain safe at home. Tim immediately laughed, teasing me about turning into my mother. I was on the verge of telling him about the peculiar book I discovered at the library, but I knew he wouldn't believe me. Just then, I heard Mum calling my name, so I told Tim I had to go, and he hung up. I let out a soft sigh before glancing down at the Prophetic Pages book. Deep down, I feared it might already be too late for my childhood best friend. I heard Mum calling my name again, so I set my phone back on the nightstand. I then walked out of my room and saw Mum standing at the foot of the stairs. She informed me that dinner was ready and that she had been calling for me for 2 minutes, urging me to come downstairs before my food got cold at the table. I sat there, pushing my peas around my plate with a fork, while Mum and Mark were engaged in conversation, but I was focused on them. My mind was occupied with thoughts of the dangerous book from the library, Tim's disbelief, and the looming possibility of losing my best friend, either tomorrow or maybe even tonight. "Hey, little bro, what's up with you?" Mark inquired. I jumped in my seat, nearly falling out, but I managed to keep my composure because I knew if I hit the ground, Mum would treat me like a little baby. "Oh, I'm just pondering my history essay. I found some intriguing information at the library, and I think it will help me score a good grade." I couldn't share the details about the so-called death book because neither of them would believe me, especially since Tim never believed me when I warned him about his fate. After dinner, I headed back to my room, sat on the bed, grabbed the book, and flipped to the page detailing Tim's death. I kept staring at it, wondering if it was real or if I could tear the page out and somehow prevent it from happening, like some sort of paradox. But then I remembered that this book was indeed from the library, and I had borrowed it, yet it lacked any library barcodes or scanning tags. So perhaps it didn't actually belong to the library. I let out a soft sigh before placing the book on my nightstand, getting ready for bed, and soon I was lying in the dark bedroom, thinking about Tim and the terrible car accident that awaited him on April 15th. The next morning, as I woke up, sunlight streamed through my window. I sat up, rubbed my eyes, and yawned. Instantly, I turned around, glancing at my phone, my thoughts immediately drifting to Tim. I could hear my heartbeat pounding in my ears. I quickly grabbed my phone and texted Tim, checking if he was all right and if he had enjoyed the movie. I anticipated a swift response, but there was nothing. Throughout the day, I kept waiting for Tim to either call or text me, but still no reply came. Panic began to creep in, and I muttered in frustration under my breath. I made the decision to call Tim's home phone. However, instead of him picking up, it was his mother. When I inquired about Timothy's whereabouts, I heard her gasp in horror. She informed me that Tim had been involved in a car accident while driving to the grocery store, and the paramedics said he didn't survive. In that moment, I felt my legs buckle beneath me. I leaned against the wall, sliding down until I collapsed onto the floor. The prophetic pages had spoken the truth, and it had come to pass. The book had foretold his death, and despite my efforts, I couldn't save my best friend from dying. The very next day, I found myself back at the library, enveloped in a fog of sorrow and disbelief, desperate to comprehend what had just transpired. I settled into the same desk as before, retrieving the book from my bag, gazing at it before I began to leaf through the yellowed pages once more. Each page contained a meticulous account of the life and death of various individuals. Some were familiar to me, while others were not. Yet, each entry represented a friend or family member who would meet their end in unique circumstances, all described in vivid detail as I continued to turn the pages. I suddenly halted on one that sent a chill through my hands, almost compelling me to hurl the book across the room. Jessica Carter, age 25, dies from an aneurysm on April 16th, 2023. In that moment, I understood that this page detailed the death of my girlfriend, Jessica. A shiver coursed through me as I recalled the last time I saw Jessica. We were at the coffee shop, sharing laughter over something silly. Without hesitation, I jumped up, stuffed the book into my bag, and fished my phone out of my pocket to dial Jessica's number. "Hey, Daniel, what's up?" "I'm at work right now," her voice came through. "Listen, whatever you're doing, you need to stop or head home. You're in danger." I rushed to explain about the book I discovered in the library, detailing how it revealed the deaths of all my friends and family, including her. I then told her I found Tim's name in the book, and that he died in a car accident. Yesterday, just as the book predicted for that exact date. Whoa, Daniel, I think you've been watching too many horror movies. But when you get to the restaurant, at least bring me that so-called mystical book you have, Jessica said before hanging up. I felt an urge to scream into the emptiness. I urged my feet to run, wishing I had brought my car or something quicker than my clumsy feet. When I finally reached the restaurant, I doubled over, gasping for breath. As I looked up, I saw a crowd gathered around the entrance, and confusion washed over me. Were they having a sale, or was there a fight going on? I was indifferent to the commotion. My only focus was finding Jessica to show her the book. I squeezed through the throng and entered the restaurant, where I noticed paramedics and medical personnel, along with an area cordoned off by barriers. I couldn't see what was happening due to another crowd blocking my view, so I tapped an older man on the shoulder. He turned to me, concern etched on his face. "Sir, what's going on?" "One of the workers just collapsed, and the paramedics think she's dead," he replied. The moment he mentioned she, my heart plummeted. I pushed through the crowd, and there, on the ground, eyes closed and lifeless, lay Jessica. "No, Jessica," I yelled, my voice echoing in the chaos. Instantly, the paramedics and medical staff turned to me. One approached and asked if I knew her. I told her I was Jessica's boyfriend, that I had just spoken to her on the phone moments ago, urging her to leave work because it wasn't safe. I was rambling, overwhelmed, and I stopped when the paramedic placed her hands on my shoulders. "Young man, it's okay. You should know what happened. Your girlfriend has died from an aneurysm, and there was nothing we could do to save her." "I'm so sorry," the paramedic said. The book felt like a dark oracle, revealing its grim secrets, and I thought about showing it to this woman. But if I did, she would likely bombard me with questions I couldn't answer. So I thanked her and, without another word, pushed past everyone and exited the restaurant, furious that this cursed book had claimed yet another person I loved. Weeks later, the unsettling pattern persisted. Each page revealed the demise of a victim who was more familiar to me than Jessica. I had become a captive of the book, unable to resist the allure of its sinister knowledge. It felt as if it understood my sorrow, with the ink appearing darker on every page. Then I stumbled upon a page that shattered my heart into countless fragments upon seeing the name of the individual. Marcus Roberts, age 27, died of a heart attack on April 30th, 2023. I realized that was tonight once again, and I leaped out of bed, rushing to brother's room, where I found him lacing up his shoes. "Dude, where are you going? It's almost 9 o'clock at night. Can't sleep, thinking about going for a late night run. Be back soon." I pleaded with him not to venture outside tonight, insisting it was too perilous. Mark chuckled, saying I was becoming like Mum, but I was just terrified of losing my brother. After an hour had passed, I found myself in the kitchen assisting Mum in preparing her renowned double chocolate chip cookies, and I could see that she appeared anxious about something. I inquired about what was troubling her, and she revealed that Mark had not returned from his walk, nor had he sent her a message as he had promised to do when he was on his way back home. I sensed what was about to unfold, and I knew I had to intervene. I looked at Mum and told her I needed to take care of something urgent, to which she simply nodded in agreement. Without another word, I quickly put on my jacket and shoes, then dashed out of the house. My breath came in quick, uneven gasps as I sprinted toward the park, Mark's favorite place to walk. As I neared the park, I spotted a figure lurking in the shadows, and my heart raced in my chest. When I turned the corner, I found him lying on the ground, clutching his chest. "Mark," I yelled. I hurried to my brother, but deep down, I already knew it was too late for him. That dreadful book had taken yet another victim, and this time it was my brother. I was descending into madness. First, my two friends were taken from me, and then my brother. The loss of my loved ones was a heavy burden on my emotions. That's when an idea struck me. I seized the book and made my way back to the library one last time, desperate for answers. The main librarian, an elderly woman, looked up at me with her piercing green eyes. "What is this book? Why is it causing all of this?" I slammed the prophetic pages onto the desk. Initially, the lady remained silent, but as she took the book and examined it, her expression shifted, and she regarded me with a serious look. "Young man, where did you come across this book?" "I was here last time searching for history encyclopedias when this book fell off the shelf and landed on my foot. But you still haven't answered my question. What is this book?" "That's the prophetic pages. It has always existed, young man. It chronicles the lives that are intertwined with yours and predicts not only death, but also the weight of the choices and paths we take." The librarian clarified. "This isn't a choice, it's a curse." I shouted in frustration. "Perhaps it is, or perhaps it isn't. But understand this, that book only reveals what is already destined. It's not the cause, but a reflection of the choices you've made and the connections you've established. She replied. I took a step back, my mind racing. Had I somehow cursed all those deaths of my loved ones without realizing it? Was I in some way accountable for the choices they made or the paths they chose? Can I change this? Is there any way to stop it? I inquired. The only way to put an end to this situation is to cut off the connections, but it comes at a cost, young man. Her words seemed to penetrate deep within me, and without uttering a single word, I turned away from the desk. Leaving my book behind in the library, I came to the realization that I had to create distance from everyone I cared about. I needed to sever ties with them, even though it felt like a betrayal. It was the only way to protect them all. In the following weeks, I dedicated my days and nights to solitude. Whenever I encountered someone I recognized, I would steer clear of them, and I ignored their calls and messages. This was torturous, yet it brought a sense of relief as I observed that no one around me was perishing, and I felt assured that my loved ones were safe. Then one day, as I went to my bedroom to indulge in some video games, I discovered the Prophetic Pages book lying on my bed, and I felt as if I could melt into a puddle. I hurried over to it, picked it up, and as I examined the cover, my hands trembled while I opened the book and flipped straight to the last page. To my surprise, it was entirely blank, leaving me puzzled, recalling what the librarian had said. I touched the paper and watched in amazement as the information began to materialize before my eyes. When I saw the name of the next person destined to die, my jaw dropped in disbelief. Daniel Roberts, 25 years old, passed away from loneliness on May 15th, 2023. The book slipped from my grasp. That date was tomorrow. I couldn't fathom it. I felt as if I might either vomit or weep like a child. The realization hit me like a massive wave. I had been so focused on saving my friends and loved ones that I had unwittingly sealed my own doom. I needed to cut myself off entirely from everyone, even my mother, who was thankfully still alive. But I was destined to become a mere ghost, a mere shadow of who I used to be. This book had twisted my intentions, transforming my wish to protect into a sentence of death the following day. I found myself sitting alone on the floor of my bedroom, feeling the darkness creeping in, coiling around me like a serpent. I reminisced about my friends and brothers, recalling the laughter and memories we had created together. It dawned on me that I had forsaken them all, and in doing so, I had condemned myself. Mum attempted to coax me out of my room, but nothing she said had any effect. As night descended, I sensed the air becoming thick and oppressive. Suddenly, I heard whispers, likely from that dreadful book echoing in my mind, the pages shifting as if they were alive. I let out a soft sigh, rising to my feet and moving to my nightstand where the Prophetic Pages lay. I began flipping through the book, only to find it completely blank, and I realized I was about to join them. I shut the book and hurled it to the ground. Confronting the horrifying truth, I had become a prisoner of my own decisions, a victim of fate. As the sudden darkness enveloped me, I grasped the meaning of it all. The real terror did not stem from the foretold deaths, but from the isolation I had chosen to accept, but now it was too late. I had become a new edition of the Prophetic Pages, destined for a solitary conclusion. As I sank into the shadows, I finally understood how to escape the curse of the Prophetic Pages. Story 1 ends here. Now, let's begin Story 2. The key won't turn. I jiggle it again. The familiar brass cool against my fingers. Click, click, nothing. Just resistance. Where there should be the easy slide of the deadbolt. I've used this key 1,000 times. And right now, groceries in one arm, briefcase tucked tight. Half asleep after a long day at work. I am not amused. Emily, I call, giving the solid oak door a knock. Hey, the lock's being weird. Did you deadbolt it funny again? Silence from within. I peer through the narrow leaded glass window beside the door. Emily is standing in the hall, frozen halfway between the living room and the kitchen. She isn't moving toward the door. She's staring at me. Her face is bone white, her eyes wide and unblinking, fixed on mine through the distorted glass. She looks like she's seen a ghost. Emily, what's wrong? I knock harder, a flicker of unease tightening in my chest. Emily, hey, are you okay? Let me in, please. It's me, it's Ben. I rattled the handle, panic rising now, all my focus on her. A choked sob escapes her, her hand flying to her mouth. Tears well and spill over, tracking paths through her pallor. Still, she doesn't move. Toward the lock. Emily, please. I hammer on the wood now. Open the door. Talk to me. What happened? She flinches like she's been struck, stumbling back a step. No, she whispers, shaking her head. No, no. This isn't possible. My heart kicks hard. Emily, honey, what's going on? I press my face closer to the door, voice low, urgent. Open the door, please. Let me help you. She backs further into the shadows, her hands trembling at her sides. No, she says again, firmer this time. You can't be here. Emily, I say softly. It's me. It's Ben. Just, open the door, please. She snaps, then her voice, sharp and panicked. You're not Ben. Ben is dead. Silence slams between us. Her voice, when it returns, is a thin, broken whisper, barely audible through the thick wood. You died, Ben, 6 months ago. Another sob tears through her. We mourned you. I mourned you. 6 months. The impossibility of it slams into me. I remember yesterday morning, kissing her sleep-warm cheek, the smell of her shampoo, the mundane argument about whose turn it was to take out the recycling. I remember today, the commute, the tedious budget meeting. Emily, that's insane. I'm right here. Look at me. I saw you this morning. I'm real. You look like him. She weeps, her voice thick with revulsion now, cutting through the fear. You sound almost like him, but you're not, Ben. Her terror isn't hysterical. It's cold, absolute, and utterly devastating. Please, just go away. Whatever you are, leave us alone, please. And then she turns. Her footsteps echo down the hall, leaving me stranded, exiled, on the porch of my own home. My breath stutters. My fingers go numb. I drop the groceries without realizing. Plastic bags splitting, cans rolling across the stoop. I dig in my pocket for my phone, hands trembling, but it isn't there. Of course it isn't there. Where the hell is it? Help, I shout, turning to the street. Somebody, please. I need help. Windows glow warmly in the distance. Cars pass. No one answers. I sprint down the sidewalk, nearly tripping on the curb, and tear across the block toward Mike's house. My oldest friend, the only person who might make sense of this. The porch light is off. I pound on the door with both fists. Mike, open up. It's Ben. Emily's not okay. She's saying crazy things. Please, man, I don't know what's going on. The living room curtain twitches. A sliver of Mike's face appears, pale, strained, eyes wide and bloodshot. The porch light flicks on. The door cracks open, and there's Mike, standing barefoot in the doorway, blinking against the glare. I open my mouth to tell him all that happened, but the look on his face stops me cold. It isn't confusion. It isn't disbelief. It's pure, unadulterated horror, the same look Emily wore. He sees me. His lips press into a thin, bloodless line, and the door snaps shut. Mike, don't do this, I roar, slamming my fist against the wood. It's me. His voice, shrill with panic, comes from an upstairs window. Stay away. I'm calling them. I'm calling the police. Get off my property. The window slams shut. That's when I hear the sirens, faint at first, then rising into a full, shrieking wail that floods the street. Red and blue lights strobe across the trees, the houses, my face. 2 cruisers skid to a stop, blocking my car. The officers step out, hands hovering near their holsters, every movement cautious and controlled. Sir, step away from the door. Hands where I can see them. The female officer shouts. Relief crashes again into panic. Officers, thank God. My wife, Emily Carter, -17 Oakwood. She locked me out, changed the locks. She's having a breakdown. And Mike here, I gesture wildly at the house. He won't listen. Something's terribly wrong. Please help her. She's alone and terrified. The male officer, younger, keeps his laser focus on me. Sir, your name, calmly. Ben Carter. Benjamin Carter. I live at 17 Oakwood Lane. Please, you have to help me get to my wife. She needs me. The female officer's eyes flick to Mike's house. The upstairs window is open a crack. Mike's face is visible. He nods frantically, pointing at me, his mouth moving silently. Him, that's him, Mr. Carter. The female officer says, her voice losing none of its edge. You need to calm down. You're causing a disturbance. You're trespassing and causing distress. Trespassing. He's my best friend. My wife needs help. Check your files. Call it in. I'm Ben Carter. My voice is raw, rising uncontrollably. The frustration, the fear, the sheer impossibility of it all boils over. I take an involuntary step toward her, hands gesturing wildly. Sir, step back. Both officers shout in unison. The male officer draws his taser, not aiming, but holding it ready. Hands behind your back. Now, no. Listen to me, I yell. The world narrowing to the flashing lights. Their rigid faces, Mike's terrified eyes in the window. I don't resist, but my body is taut wire, vibrating with frantic energy. My words tumbling out in a desperate, incoherent stream. She's my wife. The locks are new. 6 months is crazy. I was here yesterday. Mike, tell them it's me. Place your hands behind your back, sir. The female officer moves fast, her grip firm on my wrist. The cold, hard click of the cuffs is a shock, a sound of absolute surreal finality that cuts through my panic. I don't fight, but my body trembles violently. You're under arrest for trespassing and disorderly conduct. You have the right to remain silent. The words blur. I'm guided firmly, my protests dissolving into choked gasps, into the back of the cruiser. Through the cage, I see Mike finally open his front door, talking rapidly to another officer, gesturing at me, his face still etched with pure fear. Neighbors watch from darkened windows. The station is a blur of harsh fluorescence and muffled sound. Processing passes in a haze. fingerprints pressed to the cold scanner. The sharp tang of metal in the holding cell where they leave me, just for now. Then the door clanks shut and silence rushes in. Panic fades, leaving behind a hollow cold that settles deep in my bones. Trembling just beneath the skin. They called it trespassing. Disorderly conduct. Said Emily locked me out. Said Mike was terrified. The words circle in my head. Finally, the door opens. A detective enters. He pulls up a chair. "Mr. Carter," he begins, voice calm, flat. "Benjamin Carter. That's the name you gave." He opens the folder. "Yes, that's me. Please, help me. I have no idea what's going on. Please, I'm begging you. Who are you? Asterisk, asterisk, Ben Carter, I repeat. Drop the act. Who are you? Please, please, sir. There is no use in lying to me. We ran your prints." He slides a printout toward me. It shows 2 sets of fingerprints, one clearly labeled from the scanner moments ago. The other, these, he says. Tapping the second set are the prints on file for Benjamin James Carter, from his driver's license application, military records. His entire life. He looks at me, gaze steady. They don't match. What? The denial slips out, weak, automatic. That's impossible. Your machine, the machine, is fine, he says, his voice flat. Your prints do not match the prints of Benjamin Carter. He slides another paper from the folder. A death certificate. Benjamin James Carter. Date of death, March 12th, 6 months ago. My address, my birth date, my parents' names, official, sealed. This is the legal record. He slides over another document, a police report. Missing persons, Benjamin Carter. Vehicle recovered from Blackwater River. No sign of driver. Extensive search, suspended. Dated 6 months ago. Then a final sheet, a property report. Complaint from Emily Carter, 17 Oakwood Lane. Subject reports repeated attempts by unknown male impersonating deceased husband to gain entry to residence. Locks changed on date 3 months ago. Security system installed date last month. Subject described impersonator as identical to deceased spouse in appearance and voice, causing extreme distress. He closes the folder slowly. Your prints don't match Benjamin Carter's. Benjamin Carter is legally dead, his widow reports. Someone matching your exact description has been terrorizing her for months, trying to get into the home you claim is yours. He leans forward slightly, his voice quiet, filled with a terrible, chilling certainty. So I need you to tell me, who are you, and why are you doing this to that poor woman? The detective's words hang in the air like frozen poison. Prints don't match. Legally dead, terrorizing her. Their facts, delivered with the crushing weight of bureaucracy. My mind scrambles, a rat in a flooding cage. This isn't denial anymore. It's pure animal panic, clawing at the bars of an impossible trap. Who am I echo. The detective's pitying stare burns like acid. I'm Ben Carter. That's my house. Emily is my wife. My voice rises, sharper than I mean, echoing off the cinder block walls. Can't you see? She's locked herself in there, terrified out of her mind, thinking nonsense. I need to get into that house. She needs me. She needs to see me, properly, to understand it's really me. I lean forward, the metal chair scraping harshly across the floor. Take me there, right now. Unlock the door. Let me show her. Let me touch her. She'll know. She'll know it's me then. She has to. The detective doesn't flinch. but his eyes shift, hardening. That look isn't suspicion anymore. It's something colder, more cautious, like he's watching a dangerous animal pace inside a cage. Mr. Whoever you are, he says evenly, Emily Carter is safe. She's under protection. She doesn't want to see you. She's terrified of you. Your insistence on forcing your way into her home, after everything we've documented, is deeply concerning. A brittle laugh escapes me, high-pitched and wrong. She's my wife, asterisk. Of course I need to get to her. Can't you grasp that? She's confused, grieving, but I'm here. I can fix this. Just take me home. My hands clench around the cold metal table, knuckles white. I can feel the rough grain of our front door, the cool brass knob, the need to be inside, to stand in our living room, to smell the faint scent of her vanilla candle is a physical ache, a compulsion that drowns the chilling weight of the evidence. That house, it's mine, every brick. She changed the locks, but it's still mine. I belong there. She belongs with me. Let me in. The detective slowly pushes his chair back, creating space. His hand settles casually near his hip, near his weapon. As I lean further, pleading, my sleeve rides up slightly. My hand brushes against my temple, pushing back a strand of hair damp with nervous sweat. And I feel it, not the familiar texture of my own hair. It feels wrong, thicker, coarser, almost waxy, like damp straw, not human hair. When did I last wash my hair? The question surfaces, absurd amidst the chaos. Yesterday, this morning. I lift my hand again, intending to run my fingers through it to confirm the strange sensation. My gaze drops to my wrist as I raise my arm. The fluorescent light overhead is harsh, unforgiving. It illuminates the skin of my inner wrist. Normal, pale and faintly veined, but there are no veins. I stare at the skin, an even, slightly waxy pallor, with no veins beneath the surface, just smooth and unnatural, like porcelain or wax. My breath hitches, the frantic energy falters. The desperate urge to scream about Emily, about the house, falls silent. Slowly, I press the index and middle fingers of my other hand against the pulse point on my neck, just below my jaw. A habit ingrained since childhood, checking my own heartbeat. In moments of stress, I press hard. Feel the coolness of my skin. Weight nothing, no rhythmic thud, no flutter, just stillness. Profound, absolute stillness beneath the slightly waxy surface. Thump thump, I imagine it. Thump thump, but my fingers feel only the unyielding firmness of flesh. No beat, no life. The crushing weight of the evidence, the prints, the death certificate. Emily's terror, Mike's horror. No pulse. My hand drops from my neck as if burned. I look down at my other wrist again, sir. The detective says, cautious now, but the edge of suspicion deepens into something else, something closer to the fear I saw in Emily's eyes. What is it? I can't answer. The words, she is my wife, die on my tongue, hollow and meaningless. The desperate urge to get into that house curdles into something obscene, parasitic. The house isn't mine. Emily isn't mine. They belong to Benjamin Carter, the man whose skin I wear. The man buried 6 months ago. The man whose heart has stopped beating. I look up to the detective, cold resolve blooming in me. I am Ben Carter. I am going home, one way or another. Story 2 ends here. Now, we drift into Story 3. Have you ever been handed a piece of paper that felt heavier than lead, like it carried the weight of your own doom? or been told to follow rules so bizarre, so downright bone-chilling, that you started questioning whether you were awake or trapped in some fevered nightmare? I have, and I swear on everything I hold dear, I wish I never had. My name's Tommy, a plain, forgettable man in a plain, forgettable life. 38 years on this earth, and nothing much to show for it except a mailman's uniform, a pair of scuffed boots, and the silence that comes from being single in a small town. No kids, no wife, no wild stories to tell, or at least, not until that night. See, I work the graveyard shift at a creaky little post office in Mill Creek, a place so small even the stray dogs know everyone's business. Population hovers at 2,000. A good day if you count the drifters and the dearly departed resting up on the hill. It's the kind of town where nothing happens. At least, nothing that folks are willing to talk about. But let me tell you, there was one night that cracked open the quiet like a coffin lid. The night I learned the rules weren't just some oddball tradition. They were a lifeline. A set of commandments carved out to keep death and worse at bay. It all began at exactly 10:03 p.m. on a Thursday evening that smelled of rain and regret. I remember the time clear as day because I was punching in at the old brass clock on the wall, the one that ticks too loud in the silence. That's when old Marvin, who'd manned that shift longer than I'd been alive, handed me an envelope so yellowed and brittle. It looked like it might crumble to dust right there in my hand. His face, I'll never forget it, pale. His chalk eyes hollow, like he'd already seen what was coming for me. You sure you want to take over the night shift, son? His voice cracked like dry timber. I tried to muster a smile, though my gut twisted up like barbed wire. Yeah, I said, forcing the words out. I like the quiet, but Marvin didn't smile back, not even a flicker of one. Instead, with hands that trembled just enough for me to notice, he pressed the envelope into my palm. Then you'd best read this, every last word, and don't you dare cut corners, boy. Not a single one. The envelope felt cold, somehow, like it had been waiting in a grave. I opened it, heart thudding in my chest like a drum at a funeral. Inside was a single sheet of paper, yellowed and cracked at the edges. The list was typed in all caps, the ink faded but legible. And what it said, well, it read more like a survival manual than anything to do with mail. Rules for the night shift. Mill Creek Postal Station 1. Clock in exactly at 10:03 p.m. Not a minute earlier. Not a minute later, 2. Lock the front door behind you. Check it twice, 3. At 11:11 p.m., place a glass of milk on the front counter. Do not drink it, 4. The red mailbox outside is for them. Do not touch it, point 5. If you hear scratching from P.O. Box 121, ignore it. Do not open it, 6. Between 12 a.m. and 12:15 a.m., do not blink for more than 3 seconds, 7. At 1 a.m., you'll hear a knock at the back door. Do not open it, 8. If a letter arrives addressed to someone who doesn't exist, burn it. 9. Lights will flicker at 2:22 a.m. That's normal. Don't panic. 10. Never, ever fall asleep. I read the list twice. Maybe 3 times. Each word sinking into my brain like ice water down my spine. I looked up, expecting Marvin to crack a grin. Tell me it was a joke. Some kind of twisted welcome to the night shift. But there was no grin, no laughter, just that haunted look as he stepped backward, like I was already lost to him, this sum. Kinda hazing, I asked. though my voice wavered, betraying me. "No joke," Marvin said, voice low and hollow as a grave. "You follow the rules, or you don't make it to sunrise." A nervous chuckle escaped my throat, but it sounded wrong, hollow, like it didn't belong in that room. Marvin didn't join in. He just turned on his heel and walked out, the door closing behind him with a finality that sounded too much like the slamming of a casket lid. I watched him disappear into the night, not once looking back. And just like that, I was alone with the list. Alone with the silence that suddenly felt heavy, suffocating. For a long moment, I stood there, heart hammering, eyes on the paper, mind screaming at me to walk away. But rent was due. Bills don't pay themselves. And besides, how bad could it really be? So I folded the list with trembling hands, shoved it into my jacket pocket, and took my first steps into the nightmare I never saw coming. But tell me, if you were in my shoes, would you have stayed? Would you have followed the rules? Or would you have walked out and risked whatever was waiting out there in the dark? Because what came next? What came after that clock ticked past 10:03 p.m.? That's where the real terror began. The first thing I did, my hands trembling ever so slightly as the weight of the night began to settle on me who's locked the front door. Not once, but twice, just like the list demanded. The old brass lock clicked into place with a finality that made the silence of the post office feel heavier, as if the building itself exhaled its last breath and left me to fend off the dark alone. For a stretch of time, nothing out of the ordinary stirred. I busied myself with the dull routine, trying to convince myself that this was all some elaborate prank, or maybe an overactive imagination fed by too many sleepless nights. I sorted mail with mechanical precision, stacked a few battered packages with care, and tried to drown out the creeping anxiety with sips of bitter coffee that scalded my tongue. The radio crackled in the background, offering nothing but static and the occasional ghost of a melody, as if the airwaves themselves were too afraid to speak. But time, relentless as ever, dragged its feet toward the next rule. And soon enough, 11 p.m. came calling. It nearly slipped my mind, the milk. My throat constricted as I swallowed hard, cursing myself for almost forgetting such a simple task. I rummaged through the break room fridge, fingers brushing past old sandwiches and forgotten cans until I found it. A small carton of milk, cold and sweating in my grip. I placed it on the front counter exactly as the instructions said, my heartbeat echoing in my ears. At first, the world remained still. No thunderclap, no unearthly wail, just the hum of the flickering lights above and the soft tick of the wall clock, each second feeling heavier than the last. But then, out of the corner of my eye, something shifted. My skin prickled with that unmistakable sense of being watched. I turned my head, slow as molasses, and there it was, shadow, a figure, tall and still, standing just beyond the front window, its outline warped by the dirty glass. I blinked once, heart caught in my throat, and when my eyes opened again, the figure had vanished, like smoke in the wind. That was the first time my blood ran cold, icy tendrils creeping through my veins. I told myself it was nothing, a trick of the light, my mind playing games. But deep down, a gnawing dread began to take root, and it wouldn't let go. Minutes bled into each other, the silence stretching so thin it felt like it might snap. And then, at precisely 11:40 p.m., I heard it. A scratching, faint at first, like the scuttle of a mouse searching for crumbs. But it grew louder, sharper claws against metal, deliberate and desperate. The sound came from P.O. Box 121. Every hair on my neck stood on end as I forced my legs to move, each step heavier than the last. The box trembled, rattling as though whatever lay inside was trying to claw its way out. My pulse thundered in my ears as I stared at it, mesmerized by the violent shaking. Without thinking, I reached into my pocket for the key, my fingers brushing the cold metal. But then Rule 5 screamed at me from the recesses of my mind. Do not open it. The words blazed in my thoughts, as loud as any siren. My hand recoiled, as if the key itself had burned me. I stumbled back, breath ragged, watching the box convulse, for what felt like forever. And then, just as suddenly as it had started, the scratching stopped. Silence fell, thick and absolute. The kind of silence that makes you feel like even your heartbeat is too loud. It was in that moment I realized this wasn't some game. The rules weren't superstition. They were my only shield against something I couldn't begin to understand. I clenched my fists, whispering to myself, no, I can't risk breaking them. Not now, not ever. Midnight arrived like the tolling of a funeral bell, and with it came the most maddening rule of all. No blinking for more than 3 seconds. My throat tightened as I set a timer on my watch. The glow of the numbers feeling like the only light left in a world that had turned alien. I fixed my gaze on the clock, counting every blink, feeling my eyes dry and burn as the minutes crawled by. 7 minutes in, and it felt like my eyelids weighed a ton, my vision blurring at the edges. But I held on, teeth clenched, refusing to let the rules slip through my fingers. Until 12:08 a.m. That's when it happened. Just a second, 1 second too long. My eyes shut, and sweet relief flooded through me. But when I opened them again, the relief turned to ice. There, behind the counter, stood a man, or what was left of one. His uniform, once blue, was torn and stained, hanging off his frame like a shroud. And his face, God help me, his face. It was as if someone had tried to piece together a human face from memory alone and failed. Features, misplaced proportions, all wrong. A mockery of a man. You're not Marvin, he rasped, his voice like gravel dragged across concrete, carried on a wind that smelled of dust and decay. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. My tongue felt thick, useless in my mouth. The figure leaned in closer, empty eye sockets boring into mine. You blinked, he said. Not a question, a statement, a sentence, and then, just like that, he was gone, as if the air had swallowed him whole. And that, my friend, was only the beginning, because the night was far from over, and I had miles to go before I saw the sun. So tell me, would you have blinked, or would you have stared into the darkness and risked? What stared back? I hit the floor like a marionette whose strings had been cut, the breath knocked clean out of me. My hands scraped against the cold, gritty tiles as I scrambled, half crawling, half stumbling toward the only place that felt like it could shelter me from whatever had just stood behind that counter, the supply closet. I slipped inside, pulling the door shut so hard it rattled on its hinges and collapsed against the wall, heart hammering like a drum in a funeral march. The air in that tiny space was stale, thick with the scent of bleach and dust, but I didn't care. I pressed my back against the shelves, drawing my knees up to my chest, and stared at the thin sliver of light beneath the door, praying nothing would darken it. The seconds dragged on like hours. My breath came in shallow, ragged bursts, each one louder than it had any right to be. I kept my eyes on my watch. Tick, tick, tick. The minutes crawled forward until finally, blessedly, the clock hit 12:15. I forced myself to stand, legs trembling like a newborn fawn's. When I stepped back into the main room, the world seemed ordinary again. The air was still. The clock ticked on. No sign of the man with the broken face. No shadows, no whispers. But my heart wouldn't slow, wouldn't let me forget that something had been there, breathing the same air, watching me dot, and the night wasn't done with me yet. 1 a.m. crept up like a storm cloud on the horizon. I barely had time to brace myself before it began the knock, exactly as the rules foretold. One, then another, then a third, each one louder than the last, reverberating through the building, rattling my bones. I clenched my jaw, held my breath, frozen, like a deer in headlights. And then came the voice. "Tommy, let me in, baby. It's cold, please." My blood ran to ice. That voice, that sweet, familiar voice. My sister's voice. But that couldn't possibly be. My sister had been dead 6 years. Buried under a headstone I visited every Christmas. I backed away from the door so fast I nearly tripped over my own feet. Hands clamped over my ears. I squeezed my eyes shut and tried to block out the sound, but the voice seeped in, soft at first, then desperate. The knocking grew violent, the wood groaning beneath the blows, and just when I thought I couldn't bear it another second, it stopped. I crumpled to my knees, the weight of it all crushing down on me, and gagged on the bile rising in my throat. I nearly lost what little was in my stomach. My whole body trembled like a leaf caught in a storm. The next hour crawled by in torturous silence. Every creak of the building, every groan of the pipes, every whisper of wind outside sent my nerves skittering. I started to hum a broken, tuneless hum just to drown out the quiet, just to remind myself I was still here, still human. And then came to 22 a.m. The lights flickered just as the list had promised. A stutter of brightness, a breath of darkness. I clenched my fists and whispered, "That's normal. That's normal." But my voice didn't even convince me. When the lights steadied, my eyes darted to the front counter, and that's when I saw it. The milk was gone. My stomach dropped like a stone into a bottomless well. I hadn't touched it. No one had come through that door. Or so I thought. Something had. Driven by equal parts fear and foolishness, I turned toward the red mailbox outside. Rule 4 blared in my mind like a siren. Do not touch it. But I had to see. I had to know. The night had already twisted beyond anything I could have imagined. My boots crunched across the gravel as I stepped out into the cold, my breath visible in the frigid air. The red box stood there, mouth hanging open like it had just spoken some terrible truth. I peered inside, heart in my throat, empty. Just a hollow space where something had once been, or worse, where something had reached in. And before I could stop myself, before I could think, I slammed it shut with a bang that echoed through the night and sprinted back inside, lungs burning, blood roaring in my ears. I leaned against the door, gasping for air, realizing too late what I had done. I'd broken a rule. And in a place like this, mistakes don't go unpunished. At 3:03 a.m. sharp when the world feels thinnest, like the skin between life and death is stretched to breaking a sound sliced through the silence. A soft, almost polite shuffle against the floorboards. I froze, breath hitched, as a letter slid under the front door. Just like that, like it had been handed over by unseen fingers that waited on the other side. I stared at it for what felt like forever. My hands trembled as I bent down to pick it up, fingertips brushing the yellowed paper. No stamp, no return address. Just a single line scrawled in a crooked hand across the front. To the man who shouldn't be here. The words seemed to pulse on the page. I swallowed hard, the lump in my throat refusing to budge. Against every instinct screaming in my bones, I tore it open. Inside, a single sentence stared back at me, stark and cold. You broke Rule 6. The floor seemed to tilt beneath me. My ears rang. My heart pounded so loud it drowned out every other sound. I remembered Rule 8, burn it now. My body moved before my mind caught up. I stumbled toward the break room, clutching the letter like it might bite me. The microwave, that was all I could think of. I stuffed the paper inside, slammed the door, and hit start. The machine hummed, the letter sparking and curling as the flames took it. Acrid smoke filled the room. The fire alarm wailed, piercing the night like a banshee's cry. But I didn't care. Let it burn. Let the whole building burn, if it meant ending this nightmare. Seconds passed like lifetimes. I stood there, sweating, heart galloping in my chest, waiting for anything to change. But the night held its breath, and then, at 3:30 a.m., I saw him, Marvin, or what was left of him. His face, pale and ghostly, appeared at the window. Eyes wide, unblinking, staring straight at me. But Marvin was gone. He had left hours ago, hadn't he? I stepped closer, unable to stop myself, drawn like a moth to a flame. The figure at the window didn't blink, didn't move, just stared. Stared too long, too still, too wrong. My skin crawled. My gut twisted. I killed the lights, plunging the room into darkness, as if hiding would protect me from whatever that thing was. I sank into the shadows, heart pounding so loud I was sure it could hear me. Time stretched, warped. Every tick of the clock felt like it might be my last. And then came 4:44 a.m. A phone rang. My blood turned cold. There was no phone at the front desk, not that I'd ever seen, and yet there it was. A battered, black rotary phone, sitting there like it had always belonged. The shrill ring cut through, the quiet echoing off the walls. My hand shook as I reached for it, sweat slicking my palm. I lifted the receiver, pressing it to my ear with a dread I can't put into words. A voice dry as autumn leaves, soft as a death rattle whispered through the line. For more rules, follow them if you want to see the sun. Then nothing. Just the hollow hiss of dead air. I stood there, frozen, the dial tone buzzing in my ear, the words replaying in my mind. For more rules. How could that be? The list was supposed to be complete. I turned in a slow circle, searching for some new list, some fresh instructions, but the room offered nothing. No paper, no writing on the walls, no voice guiding me. I was on my own. 5 a.m. crept in, the darkest hour before dawn. And that's when I did the only thing left. I made my own rules. With trembling hands, I scrawled them onto the back of an old delivery slip, each word etched in desperation. 1. Trust your gut. It's the only thing that hasn't. Lead to stay in the light. The shadows aren't empty. 3. Never believe the voices, no matter how sweet they sound. Point 4. When in doubt, run, and don't look back. I sank into the chair, the wrench cold and heavy in my grip, knuckles white as bone. My eyes locked on the door, waiting watching, counting each second like it might be my last. The night wasn't done with me yet, not by a long shot. And now, the question I have for you. If the rules kept changing, if the night kept stacking the deck against EU, would you stay and fight? Or would you run into the dark, not knowing what waited for you? The sun was so close, but so was everything else. At exactly 6 a.m., as if the universe itself decided my time was up. The front door unlocked with a soft, deliberate click. I didn't touch it, didn't move a muscle toward it. It simply swung open on its own, the hinges groaning like a tired spirit set free. And with it came the dawn. Pale sunlight spilled across the threshold, chasing back the shadows that had kept me prisoner through that cursed night. I stood there for a moment, too stunned to breathe, watching the light crawl across the floor. Like salvation, and then, like a man stumbling out of the wreckage of a battlefield, I crossed that threshold, boots heavy, body numb. The cool morning air hit my face, and I gulped it down like a man starved for oxygen. I didn't look back. I couldn't. The nightmare was over. Or so I thought later that morning, after what felt like both an eternity and a blink. I picked up the phone with shaking hands. My mind raced as I dialed the district office, determined to quit, to put this whole godforsaken ordeal behind me. A woman answered, voice brisk and businesslike. Mill Creek Post Office, I began, the words catching in my throat. I'm calling to resign from the night shift. A pause, then confusion, plain as day, bled through the line. Sir, what office did you say? Mill Creek. Yes, Mill Creek. Another pause, this one longer, heavier. Sir, the Mill Creek office was shut down. It burned in a fire back in '98. There's nothing left there. Hasn't been for over 2 decades. Nobody works there. Her words echoed in my head like a funeral bell. I didn't argue, didn't ask questions. I simply hung up the receiver, slipping from my grasp, hitting the floor with a hollow clatter that seemed to reverberate through my very soul. I sat there in silence, staring at the wall, feeling the weight of something I couldn't name pressing down on me. I still have the list, the original list, yellowed creased, its edges brittle as ash. I kept it, though God knows why. Maybe as a warning, maybe as a curse. As for Marvin, gone, vanished like smoke. No one in town remembers him, not a soul. It's as if he never existed at all. As if it was just another phantom conjured by that place. But here's the part that keeps me up at night. The part that lets me know this isn't over, not by a long shot. Every Thursday night, without fail, at 10:03 p.m., I find a letter waiting on my porch. No stamp, no return address, no footsteps leading to it. Just the letter. Every time it says the same thing week after week, in that same crooked, haunting scrawl, ready for another shift. I don't answer, I don't touch it, but the truth is, I know one night I'll have no choice. One night the rules will come calling again, and next time, I might not be so lucky. So tell me, when the rules come for you, will you be ready? Or will you blink? Will you hesitate and let the night swallow you whole? Story 3 ends here, now. Listen closely to story 4. This is from my childhood that I remember, and it still terrifies me. It was like a huge fear of mine. This is what I can remember, so I've tried to fill in some missing gaps in my memory. I can't for the life of me remember if this was a huge dream or not. I've also put it in a story way to make it more easy to read. This is my first story I've wrote, so it may be rough. So be warned. When I was around 9 to 10 years old, I was in a friend group. For this story, I will call the people in my friend group Sarah, Ava, and Naya. And me, of course, not their real names, but for privacy reasons. We were inseparable, and when our birthdays would come round, we'd have a sleepover at the person's house whose birthday it was. It was a tradition of ours for years when we were in school together. It started as the kind of day you don't question too good, too simple, too bright. The sort that slips into memory effortlessly, wrapped in laughter and the easy rhythm of friendship. We were four, me, Sarah, Ava, and Nia, close enough to finish each other's sentences and read emotions with a glance. It was Sarah's birthday, so she was hosting the birthday party for the weekend. Her house, tucked at the edge of town, was the kind of place that looked like it belonged in a magazine's stone steps. Ivy crawling the sides, and a massive, creaky structure built long before any of us were born. Inside, it was warm and cluttered, in a comforting way. Books, half-burned candles, the scent of lavender and old wood. The living room was enormous, big enough for all of us to claim our own corners, but we chose to pile together on the thick, plush red rug that ran the length of the wooden floor. It was worn but soft, and when we lay back, we could see the antique ceiling fan spin lazily above us. The conservatory doors were set just to the right of the TV, tall panes of glass with white painted frames that swung open into the sunroom. The conservatory was a beautiful room in daylight, full of potted plants, ivy trailing down from hanging baskets, and a white swinging bench that creaked when no one touched it. But at night, it became something else, too still, too quiet, with shadows that didn't quite sit right. At the far end, a single, large window gave a perfect view of the backyard. The garden was huge and wild, the grass a little too long, the flower beds half-tamed. In the corner stood a chicken coop, freshly built, its wire mesh enclosure holding for clucking. Curious hens we had helped pick up that very afternoon. That's where the day had begun, with pizza in town, greasy and glorious, and sticky-fingered ice cream that melted down our arms as we sat in the park. Sarah's parents had taken us to a nearby farm to collect the chickens, a last-minute idea that turned into an unexpected highlight. We argued over names the entire ride back. Peaches was gentle, Biscuit had attitude, Shadow was always off, by herself, and Knifewell, knife pecked like she had a vendetta. Nia named her, of course. We spent the evening painting each other, mostly arms and nails and even streaks of Ava's hair. Paint stained our hands and socks. We kicked a football in the garden, collapsed on the grass, and watched the clouds shift from cotton white to bruised purple as the sun went down. At dusk, we wandered to the old wooden bridge in the park, dared each other to cross it in the fading light. When Ava screamed that she saw something move beneath it, we all ran, laughing until our chests hurt. Back at the house, night fell in a slow hush. Dinner was light and late. We built a nest of blankets and pillows on the living room rug and queued up horror movies, not the scariest movies in the world as we were kids. On Sarah's ancient DVD player, the flickering light of the screen danced on our faces as we watched. The first movie a silly, campy slasher. By the third movie, sleep tugged at our limbs. Sarah fell first, curled up with a blanket over her head. Ava followed not long after. Naya and I made it to the end credits, barely, before giving in to the warmth and weight of sleep. The room was quiet. The conservatory stood in silence, the garden beyond cloaked in moonlight and shadow. I don't know what woke me. Not a sound, not a dream, just that awful dry throat thirst that demands attention. I sat up slowly, blinking in the dark. The TV had gone silent, casting only a faint blue glow. My friends were sprawled across the rug, breathing softly. I stepped over limbs and pillows, moving toward the kitchen. The tile was cold under my feet. I poured a glass of water and leaned against the counter, letting the stillness settle over me. The house was so quiet. It felt like it had sunk into the earth. Then I turned back and froze. The conservatory window faced the garden, and someone was standing in it. A figure, still and tall, just beyond the chicken coop, not moving perfectly, centered in the moonlight, like it had always been there. At first my brain tried to fight it. My eyes scanned for signs of trickery, a shadow, a branch, something explainable. But this wasn't something you could mistake. It was a man, or something shaped like one. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Nothing about him moved, not even his arms. He didn't sway, he didn't shift. Just stood there. I whispered, "It's nothing," and turned away. My heart raced. I crawled back into my sleeping bag and pulled the blanket up to my chin. I closed my eyes, tried to block it out, but curiosity and fear won out. I opened my eyes again, and he was closer, no longer by the coop, now halfway across the garden, standing in the open lawn, facing the house directly. Every part of my body screamed to run, but I couldn't look away. I sat up, heart hammering, locked in place. I stared at him for 30 minutes, maybe more. The room around me didn't exist anymore, just the garden, the glass, the figure. Then he stepped forward, one long, slow stride. That was when I screamed, a full, broken scream that shattered the silence. The others woke in chaos. Sarah shouted. Ava clutched her chest. Naya was already on her knees, searching the shadows for danger. I pointed to the window, and they saw him. The man stood just feet from the conservatory glass. Now, he wore black hood up, coat-heavy gloves, boots. His face was shrouded in darkness, not shadow darkness, like the light refused to touch it. But it was what he held that turned the moment into a nightmare. An axe, old, heavy, the blade dull but thick. He held it low, like he wasn't in a rush to use it, like he wanted us to see it. Asterisk, asterisk, Ava screamed first, then Nia, then all of us. The man flinched, only slightly, then turned and walked back into the garden. Gone, just like that. We moved like survivors of a shipwreck, fumbling, checking locks, closing curtains, stacking chairs against the doors. We didn't talk. We didn't ask questions. Fear had robbed us of language. No one slept. The morning came with a grey sky and birdsong that felt too cheerful. We gathered at the kitchen table, huddled in silence. None of us touched the toast Sarah's mum had left. The chickens clucked in. The distance, unaware, peaceful, that felt wrong. Finally, Nia spoke. "I had a dream," she said quietly. "About him, the man. He came to the window. I opened the door and he came inside." My stomach dropped. Sarah nodded slowly. "I dreamt the same thing. He walked into the house. I tried to scream, but..." She trailed off. Ava said nothing, just stared at her hands. But I hadn't dreamed it. I was awake. I remember every detail, the taste of the water, the tile under my feet, the breath fogging in my throat, the silence, the step. So how could we all have seen the same man, the same axe, the same eyes in the dark? How could they dream what I lived? We never talked about it again. Not at school, not in group chats, not at future sleepovers. It was as if that night became a sealed box buried deep in each of us, and no one wanted to dig it back up. But I still remember. Asterisk, asterisk, and sometimes, when I pass a dark window late at night, I feel like I'm being watched. The days that followed were the kind you hope will fade into nothing ordinary, dull, routine. But nothing about that night was ordinary. The memory of the man with the axe haunted the edges of everything I did. The four of us tried to move on, but that quiet terror had slipped inside me like a shadow beneath my skin at school. I forced myself to smile and join in, but my mind kept drifting back to that moment when I saw him outside the conservatory. Window so close, so impossible. Sarah, Ava, and Nia didn't talk about it, didn't mention it. Maybe it was a silent agreement. Maybe they wanted to pretend it never happened. But I couldn't, because after that night, I kept seeing him, not full on, not standing in plain sight with that horrible axe gleaming. No, it was worse small things. Flickers in the corner of my eye, the kind of subtle presence you can't shake. I first noticed it a few days after the sleepover, sitting alone in my room. I caught a flicker of black movement near the far corner where my window met the wall. I turned sharply, heart thudding, but the room was empty. Only the settling dust danced in the stray sunlight. Then at the grocery store, standing in the cereal aisle, I sensed him there, just a shadow pressed against the end of the aisle. I blinked, and it was gone. I started avoiding my bedroom window, drawing the curtains tight even in the daytime. But sometimes, when I was lying awake at night, I could swear the faintest silhouette lingered just beyond the glass, always standing still, always watching. It was driving me mad. I stopped telling my friends. Why add to their fear? Why make this nightmare real for them? Besides, they hadn't seen him outside their windows. For all they knew, I was losing my mind. Each night, I'd lay in bed, eyes squeezed shut, willing the darkness to stop whispering his name. But the quiet creak of an old swinging bench, the same sound from Sarah's. Conservatory haunted my dreams and bled into waking moments. 2 weeks later, everything came crashing down. I woke gasping. The room was cold, colder than usual for early morning. The clock read for 37 a.m., too early to be awake and too late to be asleep. I didn't want to open my eyes, but something made me. The edges of my vision were darker than they should be, the shadows more solid. And then, there he was, outside my bedroom window, closer than I ever imagined possible. The figure stood beneath the pale light of a street lamp, black coat hanging heavy, hood hiding his face in an impossible darkness. The axe was in his hand, resting low but catching a faint glimmer of light on its dull blade. I lay frozen, heart pounding so hard it felt like it might burst from my chest. I didn't scream, I couldn't move. Was I dreaming? Was this some waking nightmare? I blinked. He didn't move. I blinked again, and suddenly he was gone. Not just turned away or slipped behind a tree, but vanished as if swallowed by the night itself. I sat up, trembling, staring at the window long after the street lamp flickered, and died. I didn't sleep again that night. The next day, I barely made it through school. Every shadow seemed to stretch too long. Every whisper of wind through the trees sounded like footsteps following me. I tried telling Sarah, just a hint, a tremble in my voice, but she looked at me like I'd lost something precious like she didn't want to hear it. It's probably just stress, she said softly. Maybe you're tired. Maybe I was. but the feeling didn't go away. Over the next week, the glimpses continued doorways at the edges of my vision, always close to windows or dark corners. Sometimes I'd catch that same impossible darkness where his face should be. I stopped sleeping in my room. I moved to the living room couch, surrounded myself with blankets and pillows, keeping every light on all night. One evening, while sitting near the window, I thought I heard a soft creak, the sound of that swinging bench from Sarah's conservatory. I froze. The air grew heavy, and I could swear I saw the faintest breath fog up the glass. But when I reached to pull the curtain aside, nothing was there. No footsteps in the grass, no shadow in the trees, just silence. The isolation grew. I stopped answering calls. I avoided texts. My friends tried to reach me, but their voices felt distant, like they were calling through a thick wall I couldn't climb. At school, I noticed others staring at me sometimes, whispers I couldn't hear but felt, as if my fear had painted a target on me. One night, exhausted and desperate, I found myself scrolling through forums online, people sharing stories of shadows that stalk, figures that watch, others who swear they've seen something no one else believes. It didn't help, because no matter how many stories I read, mine felt more real, more immediate, like he wasn't just a ghost or a hallucination, but something waiting for me. And then came the nightmares. Not dreams, but waking visions, snapshots of that night, over and over. The axe glinting in the moonlight, the cold silence, the way his darkness swallowed the garden hole. Every night I'd wake soaked in sweat, hearing that awful creak echo in my ears. I wanted to scream, to run, to hide, but I stayed silent, because the last thing I saw that morning at my window was the end of it. He never came back. No more silhouettes, no more breath on glass, no more axe in the dark. But sometimes, in the stillness of my room, I hear the faint creak of a swinging bench. And when I do, I close my eyes, because I know the garden is still watching. And maybe so is he. Story 4 ends here and now. We enter the fog of Story 5. It was just outlets, instead of high cheekbones, brown eyes and a cute puckered mouth. There was a completely flat metallic surface full of holes. My boyfriend's face looked like a wall fixture, or maybe the back of a TV. I screamed and staggered against the bathroom's towel rack. "Oh, Beth." God, my boyfriend's voice came through a tiny speaker on his outlet face. He grabbed a fleshy oval he was drying in the sink and pressed it against his head. I could hear a snap and click as he thumbed his cheeks. Within seconds, his face was attached like normal, or at least as normal as it could appear after such a horrific reveal. "So sorry you had to see me like that." I turned and fled. Out of instinct more than anything, I ran to our kitchen and grabbed a knife. The cold handle stayed glued to my palm. Beth, calm down, please." My boyfriend emerged with outstretched, cautious hands. No need to overreact. He stayed away from the glint of my knife. "Where's Tim?" I said, looking right into my boyfriend's eyes. "What did you do with Tim?" "Beth, relax. I am Tim. I've always had this." He gestured behind his jawbones. I could see little divots where his face had just connected. Little divots I had always thought were just some old acne scars. "I'm really sorry. I should have told you sooner. I should have told you as soon as I found out." What the fuck was he talking about? Found out what? That I'm not technically, that I'm not fully organic. The words froze me in place. Out of all the possible phrases he could have uttered, I really did not like the sound of not fully organic. He nodded wordlessly several times. I know it's awkward. I should have told you sooner. But as you might guess, it's not exactly the easiest thing to share. I stared for a long moment at this hunched-over, wincing, apologetic person who claimed to be my boyfriend. I pointed at him with the knife. Explain. I will. But first, why don't we put the blade away? Let's calm ourselves. Let's sit. Down. You sit down. Although visibly a little frightened of my knife, he looked and behaved as Tim always did. His eyes still had the same shine. His lips still curled and puckered in that typical Tim way. If I hadn't seen him faceless a moment ago, I wouldn't have doubted his earnestness for a second. But I had seen him faceless, and now a primal, guttural impulse told me I couldn't trust him. He has a plug face. He has a plug face. I'll go sit down. Tim raised his arms cooperatively. He grabbed one of our fold-out chairs and seated himself on the far end of our living room. Here, I'll sit. Here, and give you lots of space. I unlocked the door to our apartment and stood by the front entrance. My hand still clutched the small paring knife in his direction. It's a very warranted reaction, Tim said. I get it. Truly I do. But it doesn't have to be this uncomfortable, Beth. I'm not a monster. I promise I'm still the same. Me, I'm not going to hurt you. I aimed the stainless steel at him without quivering. Just ... explain. He gave a big long inhale, followed by an even longer sigh as, if doing so could somehow deflate the intensity of the situation. Okay, I'll try my best to explain. It's a whole lot I've uncovered over the last while, and I don't really know where to begin. But I'll start with the basics. First of all, we aren't real, I scoffed. I couldn't help myself. Well, I don't fully know about you yet. I suspect you're artificial as well, but definitely me. I have fully confirmed that I'm a fake. Goosebumps ran down my neck. With my free hand, I touched the area behind my jawline. I couldn't feel any indents. I've never had any indents there. A fake? I asked. A fake? A null? I'm not a real living person. I've been programmed with just enough memories to make it feel like I'm a carpenter in my early 30s. But really, I'm just background filler. Some sort of synthetic bioroid. Every word he said coiled a wire in my stomach. There's a couple others I discovered online. Tim pulled out his phone. Fakes, I mean. Their situations are similar to ours. It's always a young couple sharing a brand new apartment. One they can't possibly afford, ... He let the word hang. What do you mean? I said. We can afford our apartment. Beth, I've never worked a day in my life. What are you talking about? Tim steepled his hands and brought them over his face. I've set GoPros in my clothing. I've recorded where I've gone. After I put on my overalls and wave you goodbye, I take the elevator to our garage. But instead of going to P1, where our car is parked, I actually go down to P4 and lock myself up. Inside a locker. What? Something overrides my consciousness, and I sleep standing for hours. I'm talking like a full 8-hour workday, plus some buffer for any fictional traffic. Then my memory is wiped. What? My memory is wiped and replaced with a false memory of having worked in some construction yard with my crew. And then that's what I relay to you when I return home. That's all I remember. It's as simple as that. The goosebumps on my neck wouldn't relent. That can't be real. Can't be real. He stood up from his chair and pointed at the sides of his head. My whole face comes off, Beth. I squeezed my eyes closed and bit my tongue. bit harder and harder, praying it could wake me up out of this impossibility. But there was nothing to wake up from. Do you want me to show you again? Tim asked. No, I said. Please don't. I don't want to see it. Of course you don't. It's disturbing, I know. I'm a clockwork non-human who's been given the illusion of life. It's fucked. When I opened my eyes again, Tim was sitting again with his head in his palms, clutching at tufts of his hair. And do you know why they built us? Do you know why we exist? His voice turned shrill. I swallowed a warm wad of copper and realized my teeth had punctured my tongue. I unclenched my jaw. It's for decor. We exist to drive up the value of the condominiums in the building. We exist to make something look popular, normal, and safe. We're background Bayreuth actors in a living advertisement. I finally loosened my grip and set the knife by the front entrance. I grabbed my jacket. I don't know what you are, but I'm not decor. I'm normal, I said. My face doesn't come off. Tim lifted his head from his hands and looked at me cynically. Beth, have you ever filmed yourself leaving the house? I leave the house all the time. I know it feels that way. But have you ever actually filmed yourself? We both went on a walk this morning. Tim nodded. And that is the only time. The only time we actually leave is when we walk through the neighborhood. And do you know why? I gave a small shake of the head. I put on my scarf to endorse the ambience of this gentrified hellhole. We're animated mannequins looping on false memories and false lives. We're part of a glorified screensaver. That's not true. I opened the door and got ready to leave. I walk from my knee. I take walks close by because my physiotherapist said it was good for my knee. I don't walk because I'm decor. You can justify it however you want, Beth. Tim crossed over from his chair. But chances are that every physio appointment, every evening out with friends, every memory of the mall is just an implant in your head. You're wrong, and my face does not come off. Tim stood with arms at his sides. He smiled a little. It's like he was glad that I was so stubborn. Are you sure about that? Yes, I prodded behind my cheeks, looking for any ridges. You can reach behind your jaw all you want, Tim said, but that doesn't mean anything. You could be a totally different model than me. Different model. Let me check behind your head. What? Some fakes have better seams, but there's always a particular indent at the back of the head. He came over in slow, steady advances. Stop. I grabbed a knife again. You're not coming any closer. He paused, held up his hands. I could show you with a mirror, or take a picture with my phone to be sure. I don't trust you, Tim, or whatever you are. His face saddened. I swear, Beth, as weird as it sounds, I'm telling the truth. I wish it were different. You have to believe me. I didn't believe him. Or maybe I didn't want to believe him more. Maybe after seeing a person detach their own face, I just couldn't have faith in anything they ever said, ever again. I'm going to leave. Tim, I'm staying somewhere else tonight. He shook his head. A hotel won't do anything. They want you to stay at a hotel. You'll make their hotel look good. I'm not telling you where I'm staying. He laughed in an exasperated, incredulous laugh. Seriously, Beth, have you ever really looked at yourself in the mirror? We are the perfect, most banal-looking couple ever to grace this yuppified enclave. We're goddamn robots owned by a strata corporation to maintain the vibe. Think about it. What do you do at home all day? I didn't want to think about it. I walked out the door holding the knife, watching Tim the whole time, daring him to follow me. He dared in single quotes. I left down the emergency staircase. Asterisk, It was an ugly breakup. I didn't want to see him when I gathered my things, so I only collected my stuff during his work hours. He kept texting me more pictures of the seams along his face. He kept explaining how all of our friends were perpetually on vacation, which is why our whole social life exists only via screens, because it's all an elaborate orchestration to make us think we're real people when we're really just robots, designed to walk around and look nice. I called him crazy. I convinced myself that the plug fix encounter in the bathroom was a hallucination. His conspiratorial texts and calls had gotten to me and made me misremember things. That's all it was. The whole plug face episode was a fabrication. He was just going crazy and trying to drag me down with him, but I was not going along for the ride. After many heated exchanges, I eventually told him, as politely as I could, to fuck off. I blocked him across all of my messaging apps. 5 months later, he got a new phone number. He sent one last flurry of texts. Apparently, the Strata Corporation was going to decommission his existence. They were finally going to sell our old flat to an actual human couple. My simulation has served its purpose. Soon I'm going to be stored away in that P4 locker indefinitely. I messaged back saying, dude, knock this shit off and move on with your life. You're not a robot. Let go of this delusion. Seek help. I texted him a list of mental health resources available online and blocked him yet again, just because. He was having trouble controlling his mania. Didn't mean he had the right to spill it onto me. These days I'm feeling much happier. I found a new man and reset myself in a completely different part of the city. We live in one of those brand new towers downtown. Our flat is super spacious, with quick routes to all nearby amenities. It's something I could have never been able to afford with Tim. Tyler is a plumber with his own business, who has his priorities straight. He's letting me take all the time I need to adjust to the neighborhood. I'm spending most of my days sending resumes at home and chatting with Kira and Stacy, who are currently in Barcelona. When they get back, we're going to arrange an epic girls' night. Life's so much better here, so much more peaceful. Tyler holds my hand as we take our nightly walks around our place. My favorite part is when we cross beneath the long waterfall by the front entrance. Beneath the waterfall, the world appears like this shining, shimmering silhouette, waiting to reveal its magic. It's so beautiful. Story 5 ends here. Now, settle in for Story 6. My boyfriend, Ben, 26 meters, and I, 25F, have been living together for almost 8 months now. We have been together for 2 years, and it made sense financially for him to move into my apartment, as he was spending most nights here anyway. We met each other at a bonfire on the beach, a small get-together organized by mutual friends of ours. We exchanged glances across the fire for around an hour before he got the courage to offer me a beer. He was soft-spoken and awkward, virtually the complete opposite of me. We shared a beer between the ocean tide and the crackling fire throughout that night, and have been together almost every night since then. Ben was my rock, and I loved him entirely. He was always the type to find small ways to brighten my life, like throwing my pajamas in the dryer so they would be warm for me after. My shower, making me hot tea during nights when I couldn't sleep, etc. However, things began to change after Ben got his new job. We had both worked from home the entirety of our relationship. Our jobs allowed for remote positions during COVID and stayed remote ever since. A month ago, Ben applied for an office job with a different company where he would essentially be making a third more of a month's salary doing the same work he is now. I was hesitant about this change, as the most amount of time Ben and I have spent apart since that bonfire was a weekend Vegas trip I took with my girlfriends last year. Even in those 2 days with casinos and parties grasping for my focus, I could only think about Ben. I was just so used to glancing at my side and Ben being right there, always having a constant knowing of his presence. I gulped back my anxieties and remembered that A, we desperately needed money for the house we were saving for, and B, it could be beneficial for Ben and I to spend time apart. If even the thought of being away from him for 8 hours a day was giving me withdrawal symptoms, I needed to find peace in solace again. The first morning of Ben leaving for his new job 3 days ago was the most difficult. It felt as if my skin was attempting to sink into his body, that my anxious gut was screaming at me not to let him go. My nervous system was reacting to his departure as if I were never going to see him again. I wrapped my arms around his neck tightly as we slowly inched toward our front door. He pulled his face from the curve of my neck and smiled. "This will be good for us. This way, we will be able to savor every moment together even more tenderly." I buried my face into his chest and groaned in protest. "Can't we just stand here on this doormat forever? If only," Ben chuckled. He pushed his lips into my forehead with an exaggerated muah and hurried out of the apartment before I could hug him again. Shutting the door behind him, I sighed. Without missing a beat, he quickly cracked the door and poked his mouth through. "I love you," he whisper-shouted and closed the door yet again. I spent that day writhing on the couch, my eyes darting between the clock and the front door instead of work emails and video meetings. The minutes stretched into hours, and the only thing on my mind was the embrace of Ben the minute he walked through that door. For context, his place of work is about a 32-minute commute from home, and with a grace period of an estimated 7 minutes to walk to the car and pull it out of the parking garage. He would be home about 5:39 p.m. Shit, maybe I am clingy. Ben got home that evening at 5:30. I jumped with the swing of the front door as he dropped his bag in the entryway. He shoved the door closed with his shoulder and sauntered into the kitchen, his eyes on the floor. He leaned onto the counter facing the living room, stretching his arms in a wide base below him. I slowly rose from the couch. "Hey, how was work?" My voice wavered. Ben's eyes shot up at me through his eyebrows. "What do you think?" he snapped. I gripped the sides of my thighs. I couldn't imagine how tiresome this job was, if it caused Ben to be so exhausted at the end of the day, so rigid in his responses. My nose burned and I blinked. "Oh, I'm so sorry." He half nodded with a grunt and turned to the fridge, yanking it open and grabbing a beer. I couldn't fathom the urge to refrain from hugging Ben, especially after the day I spent pining over his presence, but I couldn't move from the ground I stood. It was almost instinct, like my body refused to go near him in that moment. I couldn't decipher if the lump in my chest was fear, concern, confusion, or all three. "I missed you," I shook, my hands bunching the sleeves of my sweatshirt into tight knots. The beer can touched his lips, and he froze. His eyes widened until they bulged, and he jerked his head in my direction. A wide, toothy smile slithered across his face as his eyebrows stretched into his forehead. "I missed you too," he shrilled as he slammed the beer can onto the counter and sprinted across the apartment, scooping me up into a hug and twirling me in a circle. My skin grew goosebumps as his cheek squished into mine, his hands grasping my back like talons. "My gosh, you're so cold," I exclaimed, and he quickly set me back on the ground. I patted the back of my hand onto his cheek. Are you coming down with something? Ben straightened his back and cleared his throat. In monotone, he said, maybe you're just hot. He pivoted his entire body at once and speed-walked down the hall into the bathroom, slammed the door shut, and started a shower. He was already wanting separation from each other, moments after he walked in the door. Moments after our reunion from an 8-hour workday, he was already secluded in the bathroom. My teeth ground as I attempted a deep breath. His humor peeking through his exhaustion was comforting, but I couldn't shake how cold he was, both in demeanor and physical states. The memory of his hands through my sweatshirt felt foreign and frosted, as if someone outside had switched them out with their own. I predicted that it would be a long time before either of us got used to us being separated by the outside world. I figured that a warm soup might help soothe Ben from whatever ailment he had come down with. Hopefully, some chicken noodle soup would rid the mystery fever and bring my boyfriend back to our senses. I switched on the stove and instantly became Betty Homemaker. 17 minutes after Ben went to the bathroom. He emerged into the kitchen in a towel, his dark hair strung in front of his eyes, dripping water into a puddle below him. His skin was glowing a healthy peach flush, and his eyes were bright with that smile I had missed. There he is, I exclaimed, and brought my palm to his cheek. He jumped back. Oh, yeah. His eyes fell to the ground as his shoulders sank into his chest. I furrowed my brows at him. Hello, what is going on with you? I work all day, I make you dinner, and you can't look at me. No, it's not. I reached my hand out for his shoulder. I can't remember anything else from that night. I woke up the next morning with a gasp, my pulse pounding through my body as I shot up from my pillow. I whipped my head to my left and found Ben sleeping peacefully beside me, his shoulder blades rising and falling in a soft rhythm. The new light of the morning cascaded across the muscles of his back like mountains at sunrise. I grabbed my chest and sighed. A nightmare, an incredibly horrific nightmare. I admired the back of his head, gazing at the messy tufts of hair falling in all directions, and smiled. He was real. This was real. We were real. I placed my hand on the center of his back, and he jolted awake. Jeez, Ben shouted, propping himself on his elbows. He tucked his head into his chest, his bicep shielding his audible grimaces. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to wake you, I exclaimed as I pulled my arm back into myself. Well, you did, he shouted once more. Ben turned to me, and I felt my blood run cold. His face was pink with black char, surrounding gashes across his forehead. The left half of his lips melted into his chin, exposing his teeth through the back of his mouth. His eyebrows were completely gone, along with one of his eyelids, and his cheeks fell into his neck like the jowls of a bulldog. His watery eyes bulged at me, the surrounding areas of his irises red and veiny. I shrieked and threw myself backwards out of bed, tumbling to the floor wrapped in bedsheets. I thrashed on the floor and wriggled out of the sheets, leaping to my feet and sprinting to the bedroom door. He hurriedly sat up in bed. What? He questioned with a panicked inflection. I gripped my hand on the doorknob and smashed my back against the wall. Your face, I screamed, my breath burning my throat. Ben hobbled out of bed to my vanity, examining himself in the mirror. He sighed. What about my face, Amber? I let out a shaky breath. You're hurt, Ben. You are terribly hurt. He rolled his glassy eyes and grunted. I don't have time for this, he muttered, then proceeded to walk into our closet and start getting dressed. My lungs tightened. as my eyes fixed on the window, steadily blurring in and out of focus. I slipped down the wall onto the ground, my chin frozen in a raised position. I could not form a thought in those moments. My mind whirled as it grasped for some sort of grounding, some sort of explanation for reality. Ben's complaints as he stirred around the apartment faded into background noise as if I were underwater. Suddenly, the front door slammed. My brain snapped from its comatose state, which had only felt like a few seconds, and told my eyes to look at our bedside alarm clock. 7:17. 21 minutes since I had woken Ben up. I don't remember much of yesterday. I had called in to work and spent most of it on the couch. I decided to try and sleep away this nightmare, this fever dream, whatever stupid hallucination I had been experiencing for the past 2 days. I remember drifting off into a haze of darkness, desperately attempting to reset my mind. I was woken up by the walls shaking as the bathroom door shut. I glanced at the clock, 6:09 heard the shower curtain faintly squeak along the rod, and the faucet turn on. I shivered. Quietly, I tiptoed across the apartment towards the bathroom. I passed the thermostat and found it was set to 60 degrees. Ben and I preferred the apartment to be colder side, but never below 70. We simply did not make enough money for a skyrocketed electric bill. I figured Ben was becoming too used to his new salary already. Regardless, I was freezing. I rubbed my hands along my arms and turned the knob back to the usual 72 degrees. I approached the bathroom and gently placed my ear on the door. I could make out little musical hums in Ben's voice, with the water splashes dimming as he went under the shower head. My feet shivered on the cold floor, and I noticed the lack of steam seeping from under the crack of the door. Was he really taking a cold shower in our already Arctic apartment? I decided to pick my mental battles, as these nightmares are already messing with my psyche as is. I was just glad to hear Ben's happy hums. This was real. I began to grease a pan in preparation for a chicken dinner for Ben and I. I switched on the stove and waited until I heard those beloved popping sounds of the warmed fryer. The shower stopped with the curtains squeaking once more. A beat, then a door opening, then heavy footsteps approaching behind me in the kitchen. I turned to find my Ben, soaking wet in only a towel, his face perfectly the same as it had always been, beaming with delight. I relaxed my shoulders and let out a deep breath. "Hi, you." I stepped forward to hug him, but he leaned away. "Hey, still wet," he said. My throat knotted. "Right," I sighed. "I'm making chicken if you want to grab a plate. Did you touch the thermostat?" He snapped. He darted into the living room and quickly switched it back down. His head whipped over his shoulder and he shot his eyes through me. I crossed my arms. "Ben, it's cold. We can't afford that utility bill with the air conditioning." That low, he closed his eyes and growled, "It can't be hot." I shook my head. "It won't. No." He barked and stormed into the bedroom. I switched off the stove and followed him into the bedroom. As I entered through the door, I found his towel thrown to the floor and him already tucked into bed, seemingly already asleep. I leaned into the doorway, bumping my forehead into the doorframe. I hated that new job that he got. It had only been 2 days, and it seemed that both of us were losing our minds. I gently crawled into bed and shifted under the covers. I studied Ben, studied that same back and that same hair and that same soft snore that I had been studying for the past 2 years. He was physically the same as he had always been, but the darkness he exudes is becoming more sinister with every short moment I have spent with him the past few days. I pressed my lips together and took my eyes to the small motivational sign hanging above my vanity. This too shall pass. I leaned over Ben and kissed his cheek goodnight. A guttural howl from him quickly following. I remember nothing else from last night. I woke up this morning similarly to the morning before, my heart racing and my lungs gasping for breath. I turned to my bedside table and read the clock. 6:42. I turned back and found Ben at my side, the same back rising and falling. This was absolutely real. Ben, I whispered. He shifted slightly under the covers. I whisper-shouted, Ben, what? He grunted into the pillow. I smiled. Can I see your face? I asked in a sing-song tone. He didn't respond. I traced my finger down his arm. Ben, he jolted upwards and screeched, You bitch. I jumped. Ben had never spoken to me in that manner, let alone demean me so blatantly. He had always been my sweet Ben, so gentle and loving that I had never felt safer than in his presence. I couldn't help but be rocked. Was I still dreaming? He whipped around and revealed a fleshy mass hanging across his face. There was only a triangular void where his nose had once been, and pus oozed from blisters plastered under his gelatinous eyes and drooping mouth. His skin looked like strawberry taffy stretched over his skull like a poorly adjusted mask, and his teeth jutted out of his jaw with an overstated underbite. His pillow was stained red and orange with fluids dripping down into the mattress. I froze. This was real. I am writing this from my closet floor. Ben is off to work again as if nothing has changed, and here I am taking another day off work and replaying the image of his face melting in my mind. I am questioning my own tether to reality and whether or not I should commit myself. I will update as soon as I have any further information as to what is going on with my boyfriend or why. My mind is tricking me in this manner.